Good afternoon. Welcome to the 10th Rabindra Tagore. Can you see echo please?
चेक नहीं किया था
सर पानी का क्या कह रहे हैं आप?
सामने टेबल वालों को पानी दे देना है, ये जो टेबल यहाँ वाले।
अच्छा अच्छा ठीक है ठीक है।
कहीं डबल तो नहीं हो रहा है?
Today we are holding the 10th Rabindra lecture. You all are aware that the Indian Institute of Advanced Study has a Tagore Fellowship to encourage research and study on the fields in which Tagore was most active. And Tagore, of course, was a Renaissance man. He had his interests and a deep knowledge of poetry, literature, music, folk music, drama, painting. So it was considered absolutely appropriate to have a fellowship named after him, so that people who are interested in culture and other aspects of Indian knowledge system is the buzzword these days, so I would like to not use it because it becomes a cliche. So we do have a Tagore Fellowship, and we have had some very distinguished people who have graced that fellowship. And we hold this memorial lecture every year. Before we begin, I'd like to invite our chairperson, Professor Sahasrabuddhe, our director, Professor Tiwari, our chief guest and the speaker today, Vinay Sahasrabuddhe, the secretary, Maharjan Negi, and the national fellow, Professor R.C. Sinha, to please come on stage. And in the traditional way of doing things, before commencing any event or function or celebration, it is customary to light the lamp, and I would like to request the dignitaries on stage to please proceed with the lighting of the lamp. Lighting the lamp with a heartfelt wish and a prayer to dispel the darkness of ignorance, the darkness of bigotry, and to drive away all the demons in our hearts which make us hate others. Thank you. We are very happy to have Sahasrabuddhe with us here, and I'm absolutely delighted to be able to introduce him for probably the third time. And before we proceed, as is customary once more, we'd like to felicitate the main speaker this evening, and I'd like to request our director, Professor Tiwari, to do the honors, please. known for its cold climate, but also for the warmth of its people and its hospitality. And this warm shawl, I think, would symbolize that warmth. And the placing of headgear is always considered an honor. The headgear, the pagdi, the topi, whatever one wants to call it, the turban, is always a sign of honor and respect. And the Himachali cap is also something that we love to give to all those who have been invited here. Thank you, sir. And I'd now like to request our chairperson, Sahasrabuddhe, to present him with a potted plant. Grown in our very own grounds in the Institute. And on this, let me also share some happy news. At the summer festival that is being held at the Mall Road these days, our display, flower and plant display, has won the first prize. So it has been a very, very proud moment for us, sir. And Sahasrabuddhe also gifted him with a set of books which the IIAS brings out from time to time. I'd now like to request Professor Tiwari to deliver the welcome address.
सभी लोगों को नमस्कार, सत श्री अकाल, गुड आफ्टरनून. It's really a time privilege for me to welcome one of the prominent nationalist thinker and a person who has a passion to reform the political system and also the administrative reforms that the governance structure and model of our Bharat requires. We all know that Dr. Vinay Prabhakar Sahasrabuddhe is not new to us. He has been here a couple of times and he has enlightened the IIAS fraternity on various issues that the humanity is confronted with and the issues on which really we should ponder upon and think and take forward those issues for the good of the humanity and for the good of the civilization discourse. As the name indicates, he is Vinay, Vivek and always thinks for how to contribute for the national development, national growth, and how to re-establish India as a thought leader, not only in India but the entire universe. So we are really privileged to have you here, sir, and listen to you on very important topical issue where in fact a lot of reforms are needed. And we are all intimated to all of you. The discourse that he is going to have with us today is on political party reforms for effective democratic governance. इस संस्थान की माननीय अध्यक्षा जिनसे मैं जब भी मिलता हूँ तो एक वात्सल्यमय वातावरण, ममतामय वातावरण का निर्माण उसकी मुझे अनुभूति होती है और ऐसा लगता है कि जैसे एक बड़ी बहन अपने छोटे भाई की मेंटेनेंस करती है, उस तरीके का संवाद मेरा उनसे हमेशा होता है। ऐसी विवेकशील इस संस्थान की अध्यक्ष महोदय का मैं इस कार्यक्रम में स्वागत करता हूं। हमारे वाइस चेयरमैन जो कि उनकी जो लगातार अध्ययनशीलता है और जो वर्तमान में जो इशूज हैं, स्पेशली हाउ टू इंटीग्रेट टेक्नोलॉजी with the knowledge system that we are pursuing and the knowledge that we are trying to create, how to make help of technology, he always focuses on that. So I welcome you, sir, go online. We have a couple of other prominent persons sitting on this hall. We have Professor R.C. Sinha, we all know that he is now philosopher of the country. Professor S.M. Mohanty Sahab, who has been the Vice Chancellor of Central University. Sri Purushottam Tiwari ji, who is currently has the responsibility of performing the duties of Principal Accountant General of Himachal Pradesh. We also have the privilege of welcoming Sri Rameshwar Thakur ji, IIAS, Chairperson, Himachal Pradesh Public Service Commission. We have National Fellows, Tagore Fellows and Associates in this gathering. I extend my warm welcome on my personal behalf and on behalf of the institution to this beautiful lecture that we are going to listen. And of course, Professor Malti Mathu, who is asset to this institution. And we always fall back on her to do the beautiful anchoring on occasions like this. We all know that this topic is very important. And Government of India is already pursuing the reforms in the form of one nation, one election. And a very beautiful document has been prepared under the chairmanship of a former President of India that needs deliberation, that needs implementation, because several issues relating to electoral processes that will be certainly resolved once that is done. And there are several other issues. We know that the mandate of higher educational institutions, whether they are engaged in teaching, research, outreach, or both, or only teaching or research. When we talk about the mandate of higher education institutions, then what comes to our mind is the various aspects of human life. And if we consider those aspects, we have the economic imperatives, we have the political imperatives, we have social imperatives, cultural imperatives, emotional imperatives, and also the environmental imperatives. So these 6-7 domains constitute the entire human activities that we are performing on this planet Earth. And as the time goes by, new paradigms are required to be evolved. And these paradigms concerning all these areas are the prime responsibility of the higher education institutions. Last month only, we all know that the Parliamentary Committee on Education visited Himachal Pradesh, and IIAS was given. The chairperson of the committee asked a very pertinent question, and the question was, what it is that the IIAS can boost for, that the IIAS has done during the last 10 years, and the intellectual property that the institution has created in the last decade, how that is useful for taking civilization discourse forward. And maybe my ignorance, but I didn't have much to say on this. So my appeal to all the fellows, national fellows, Tagore fellows, associates is, when we select topic for research in this institute, those have to be very relevant, those have to be topical and relevant in respect of the rich cultural, rich intellectual history that we have had. And taking from there, not going the backward, and starting afresh and really creating a mark. All of us, we know that this institute is unique. and distinct. So how we are maintaining distinctiveness of this institution, uniqueness of this institution, that is for all of us to deliberate upon and draw a roadmap so that we can really tell the world that this is what IIS is meant for and this is what the IIS is doing. And today's deliberation would be really thought-provoking because we may get some clues from the deliberation of Professor Sahasrabuddhe to think forward, and such occasions are really the opportunities for all of us to learn and draw a roadmap for this institution and really fulfill the mandate for which this was established, and also to fulfill the aspirations of our former President, Second President of India, who graciously and with lot of efforts, he set up this institution. So with these words, I close here, and I welcome all of you again. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, sir, for setting the tone for today's lecture and also for focusing on the IIAS and the responsibility that the institution and the fellows have towards reform, towards being relevant in today's world. It was, listening to you was like, first you had a broad, wide-angle shot, and then you zoomed in for a close-up of the institute. So I think that was a much needed and a well-taken reminder of what we all need to do. I'd now like to request Professor Shashipala Kumarji. He hasn't joined yet tonight. So I'd like to request you. She is the chairperson of the IIAS, and she will be giving us an introduction and an overview of the program.
भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवांसस्तनूभिर्व्यशेमहि देवहितं यदायुः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति. Respected Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe ji, distinguished speaker for today, dear Professor R.P. Tiwari ji, Director of Indian Institute of Advanced Study, respected Professor R.C. Sinha ji, National Fellow of the Institute, Shri Nehar Chand Negi ji, Secretary of the Institute, distinguished scholars sitting in front of me, below the dais, fellows, associates, staff, and officers of the Institute. We are very glad today that we are organizing this 10th Rabindra Tagore Memorial Lecture. And the speaker, Professor Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe ji, is known to us all because he has delivered earlier the Radhakrishnan Memorial Lecture in the Institute, of course at Delhi, India International Center, Delhi, in 2023. As has been pointed out by the anchor, Professor Malati Mathurji, that this Tagore Center for the Study of Culture and Civilization was established by the Government of India on the 150th birth anniversary of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, and Indian Institute of Advanced Study has been awarded this Tagore Center for the Study of Culture and Civilization by the then HRD Ministry, now the Ministry of Education. Since the Indian Institute of Advanced Study is mandated to seek out the first principles and not particular details, it will be the most natural location for an intense conversation between the inner and the outer, between the home and the world, about the continuities between yesterday and today, and about the possibilities of both for tomorrow, which occupied Tagore throughout his life. I am reading these words from the mandate that was given to us by the Ministry of Education, Government of India. The center, as the name indicates, will not be a Tagore study center alone, which would aim at studying just Tagore's works and thoughts, though such a study will be one of the important activities of the center. It would allow for reflective and creative engagement with the human condition by exploring new idioms of art, poetry, and music. And the center will provide space to scholars as well as the practicing artists to signal Tagore's deep engagement with culture and civilization founded on his belief in the oneness of our world. We all know that in the past 10 or 12 years, 9 lectures, Rabindra Tagore Memorial Lectures have been organized by the Institute, and we have had such distinguished speakers as Shri Pranab Mukherjee. The inaugural lecture was delivered by him as President of India in 2013. Then we had Shri Gulzar Sahib in 2014, Shri Ratan Thiyam in 2015, Professor V.N. Goswami in 2016, Padma Shri Professor Ramesh Chandra Shah in 2018, Honorable Vice President of India Shri Venkaiah Naidu ji in 2019, Shri Ram Madhav ji in 2020, Padma Vibhushan Dr. Sonal Mansingh ji in 2022, and Dr. Oscar Pujol, the Indologist and Sanskritist from Spain, who delivered the RTML last year. Besides these annual lectures, the Institute also awards Tagore Fellowships to outstanding scholars, and we have one of the Tagore Fellows present here, and one of them has already been selected and will be joining us shortly. This much about the Rabindranath Tagore Memorial Lecture at the Institute and what activities have been going on under its banner for the last decade, one and a half decades. As to the speaker for today's RTML, our director, Professor Tiwari ji, has already remarked, the speaker is not a person who needs to be introduced. All of us know him very well because he is in public life. But I will read in brief his interests, his work that he has been doing, and the theme he himself will delineate upon. Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe is a nationalist social worker at heart and a researcher cum student of political science. He has been member of Parliament in the Rajya Sabha between 2016 to 2022. From 2018 until 2024, he headed the Indian Council for Cultural Relations as its president. From 2020 till 2022, he was also the chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Education, Women, Children, Youth and Sports. Currently appointed as the chairman of the State Cultural Policy Implementation Committee, he is also looking as the chairman of the Finance Committee of Prime Minister's Museum and Library, New Delhi. Born in Nashik, Maharashtra, in a middle-class family, he earned his postgraduate in English literature from Mumbai University and later did his PhD also from University of Mumbai. After shouldering national level responsibilities, he had brief stints in journalism and corporate communications. A founder director in 1988, he joined Ramdhaun Halgi Prabodhini RMP a unique academy established to build the capacities of elected representatives and politicians in Mumbai as its founder director. Since 2016, he is the vice chairman of Prabodhini and became the national vice president of the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party in 2014. He continued to shoulder the responsibility for 2 consecutive terms until 2020. Currently a member of the National Executive of the BJP, he also holds charge of the Thane Lok Sabha constituency. In the past, Dr. Sahasrabuddhe has worked on the Management Council of the Mumbai University. Between 2012 to 15, he was also the Vice President of 2 centuries-old Asiatic Society, Mumbai. Dr. Sahasrabuddhe has authored and edited about over half a dozen books in Marathi and English, couple of which have also received distinguished awards. The recent one includes The Art of Implementation, edited by Dr. Sahasrabuddhe. It has a bunch of chapters contributed by stalwarts like Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, Sanjeev Sanyal and others. We are delighted to have you amongst us, Dr. Sahasrabuddhe, and we welcome you once again on behalf of the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, and I also welcome you on my own behalf. Today he is going to speak on political party reforms for effective democratic governance. Professor Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe.
Thank you, ma'am. With that detailed introduction to our speaker, there is absolutely no need for me to go on. And the only thing that is really surprising is how he has managed to fuse culture with politics. Because education and culture is not something that we generally associate with politicians, die-hard politicians. And the fact that he's associated with an academy which strives to build up the capacities of our elected representatives and politicians is something to be really, really treasured and admired. So I would like to welcome, with due respect, sir, please address the audience.
इस बहुत ही प्रतिष्ठा प्राप्त संस्थान की अध्यक्षा आदरणीय डॉक्टर श्रीमती शशि प्रभा कुमार जी, श्री आर.सी. सिन्हा जी, मेरे मित्र कुलपति और अभी यहाँ निदेशक श्री आर.पी. तिवारी जी, श्री महरचंद नेगी जी, जो इसको अन्य वर्चुअल मंचों पर देख रहे हैं, ऐसे सभी सम्मानित और उपस्थित यहाँ के फेलोज, अन्य सभी भाइयों और बहनों, ये बहुत गौरव का विषय है कि आज यहाँ पर आपके सम्मुख में 10वां रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर स्मृति व्याख्यान देने के लिए निमंत्रित किए जाने के बाद उपस्थित हूँ। मैं अध्यक्ष महोदय और सचिव इस संस्थान के निदेशक महोदय से आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ, उनका कृतज्ञता व्यक्त करता हूँ, और आप सभी भी समय निकालकर इस व्याख्यान को सुनने के लिए आए, मैं आभारी हूँ। Generally speaking, democracy is something which we habitually take for granted. Basically, perhaps because in India, democracy is not just a phenomenon confined only to the statecraft or the political system, but it is very much an essential ingredient of India's worldview. We cannot imagine India without democracy. And more so people of my generation, who exactly 50 years before some of us, and I was one of the fortunate amongst them, to offer satyagraha against the draconian rule of emergency in 1975. So we have learned a lesson. In fact, 50 years before, the emergency taught us a lesson that don't take democracy for granted. And we normally take democracy for granted because we misperceive democracy and equate it with elections. We equate with voting our freedom of choosing our rulers, which of course is an essential part of it. But democracy is not just only about political parties, not just only about elections, not just only about voting. It is much, much more than that. And therefore, it is required that we discuss all the pillars of the magnificent edifice of democracy. And one of the important pillars, I would say, is our political parties. And unless and until we, as citizens, as voters of this great republic, apply our mind and think about the health of democracy, and thereby the health of our political parties, or the system in which our political parties function, I am sure we cannot certainly consider that democracy will continue to deliver what we expect from the democratic system. Whenever we speak about democracy, the discussion always becomes one-sided, as nobody dares to question the rationale behind the selection of democracy and thereby democratic governance. However, just because democracy is something which nobody can oppose, doesn't mean that all those who refrain from opposing democracy are truly committed to the same. This is because regimes that are far from democratic too describe themselves as republics, and their heads talk at length about the virtues of democracy. And many such countries are there in our neighborhood, and I will not name them. It is obvious that questioning even the very ability of democracy to deliver, if not the idea of democracy itself, amounts to crass political incorrectness. And nobody wants to be politically incorrect. So everybody talks about democracy, but perhaps refrains from thinking in depth about democracy. Regardless of this, the ability of democracy to rise to the expectations of the people and deliver true good governance with all features inherent to the same has seriously been under a big question mark for the last several decades. There are several organizations claiming to be global watchdogs who have been into certifying the genuineness of democracy, and they routinely come out with reports claiming that they assess the quality of democracy very objectively. I mean, once I came across an organization which talks about a forum of Asian political parties. And this ICAP is the short name of it, International Conference of Asian Political Parties. And much to my surprise, that organization has been promoted by our northern neighbor who doesn't know even the D of democracy exactly. But that is how people behave, that is how nations work, political correctness. There are several organizations, as I said, claiming to be watchdogs, but whether their assessment of democracy is objective enough remains a question. Most such democracy assessment projects are seen as biased because of multiple reasons. Firstly, their academic integrity has not always been beyond any doubts, thanks to the opaqueness of the methodologies and also their lack of ability to move beyond prejudices and also stereotypes. For example, disregarding the qualitative difference between democracy in India and in Pakistan, V-Dem report, which in the political science fraternity is a very famous institution which comes out with reports every year. So V-Dem report 2024 puts both the countries in the category of electoral autocracies. However, whether the VDEM report or the Freedom House report, one rarely comes across a dispassionate analysis of the factors responsible for what is called as democratic backsliding. As a consequence, the task of analyzing the real reasons for the now almost unstoppable decline of democracy becomes all the more difficult. Researchers have attributed this decline to a set of reasons like populism, economic inequality, social discontent, personalism, COVID-19, great power politics, authoritarian values, polarization, misinformation, incrementalism, and so on and so forth. It is noteworthy that purported decline in political trust and satisfaction with democracy has been cited as one of the principal reasons for declining levels of popular trust and the resultant erosion of popular support for the democratic project. But sadly, the reasons behind the decline of political trust and satisfaction with democracy have not been analyzed elaborately. Nobody has taken those pains. Some 3-4 years before I had the chance of visiting the country which was formerly a part of the USSR. Now, of course, it's a democracy, at least for the name's sake. All other parameters of democracy are there. Elections are happening. There are maybe 3 to 4 political parties. Government change also has happened. But when I was asking the citizens over there in an informal chat whether they preferred the era during the Soviet regime or they are happy about whatever is happening today, they were reluctant to answer. After having probed further, they told me that, to be very candid, what was previous was better. Why? Because democracy, as they told me, has not added any value to our routine life. It has not brought anything new to the table. It has not given us what we expected from democracy. And therefore, not a single analyzing agency has taken care of looking into the quality of the functioning of political parties, which are indisputably the vanguards of democratic polity. This takes us to another realization that not just the assessing agencies, but the political science fraternity at large refuses to take any serious cognizance of the state of political parties in different democracies all over the world. I mean, since my subject of research during my doctoral study was about political parties. This is an academic environment, so I may share the title of the subject, which was Political Parties as Victims of Populism and Electoral Compulsions, a Quest for Systemic Solutions. Later on it was published in the form of a book also, and the book is named as Beyond a Billion Ballots. Because that is what people like me would want political parties to move beyond ballots. All this indicates two things. Firstly, the primacy of political parties as critical democratic institutions continue to be undermined by everyone and everywhere. Secondly, hundreds of political parties working in different functional democracies have failed in making any significant impact on the democratic landscape. As a consequence, ignoring the contribution whatsoever of parties in the making and unmaking of democracy has become commonplace, and therefore perhaps unimportant as well, sadly. Coming to the health of political parties and the success of democracy, notwithstanding the apathy towards political parties as institutions on the part of political scientists and researchers, the salience of the role of parties and their centrality to the success of democracy cannot be overlooked. हमारे देश में भी एक जमाना था कि जब पार्टी विहीन डेमोक्रेसी की बात लगभग 50 साल पहले जयप्रकाश नारायण जी ने की. He was one of the advocates of party-based democracy. Nobody would oppose such idea, but at the same time it is very difficult. If there are no parties, then people definitely will not have very marked, clear alternatives before them. See, democracy is all about the element of choice. When you have to select between green, yellow, maybe black, blue, white, then there is a choice. But if you are asked that you select between yellow, 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 yellow and yellow, then you would say, why would I vote? And that is what is unfortunately happening in most democracies today, if not all. And therefore, friends, survival of democracy hinges upon how effectively democratic governance is delivered, and delivery of democracy depends upon those manning the infrastructure of democracy. Elected representatives, after all, represent a political party, and hence, reviewing the state of political party is critical beyond any doubt. At the outset, let's understand the nature of political parties. One of the notable attempts of defining a party includes that of political scientist Sigmund Newman. According to him, a political party is the articulate organization of society's active political agents, those who are concerned with the control of governmental power and who compete for popular support with another group or groups holding divergent views. As such, it is the great intermediary which links social forces and ideologies to official governmental institutions and relates them to political action within the larger political community. A general analysis of key attempts to define a political party shows that emphasis on organization, leader-follower relationship, consideration of power, and concern for popular support are some of the vital characteristics of a political party. It needs to be mentioned here that ideology, which is a comprehensive and mutually consistent set of ideas by which a social group makes sense of the world, has been neglected by most theorists. It is usually inexplicable as to why political scientists ignore ideology, the fundamental rationale behind the existence of any political party. Due to this neglect of ideology, analysis of the motivational aspect of party organization also stands ignored. In a situation of this kind, as many of us might have experienced also, time and again, I vividly remember some 10-15 years before, there was a poet in Maharashtra. He presented a Marathi poem in a Kavi Sammelan kind of. और कविता कुछ इस तरीके की थी कि हास्य कवि थे, व्यंग्यात्मक कविताएं प्रस्तुत कर रहे थे, तो उसने एक कविता प्रस्तुत की कि एक बार ऐसा हुआ, जो विधाता है उसके दरबार में, कि एक व्यक्ति को पृथ्वी पर इस तरीके से भेजा गया और भेजने के बाद विधाता को ध्यान में आया कि मैं इसके मस्तिष्क में, इसके माथे में मस्तिष्क रखना ही भूल गया. I have sent a creature, a brainless creature on the earth. So the विधाता was very perturbed और वो चर्चा कर रहा था कि ऐसे क्या करें अभी, इसको कहाँ भेजें. तो उसके एक सलाहकार ने कहा कि भाई साहब इसको राजनीति में भेज दीजिए, वैसे भी वहां पर मस्तिष्क की कोई जरूरत नहीं. I mean that is the level of derision about political class. इस तरीके से चर्चाएं होती रहेंगी, विमर्श बनते रहेंगे, तो जनतंत्र की सेहत और जनतंत्र का स्वास्थ्य और जनतंत्र के प्रति आम लोगों की आस्था इसका क्या होगा, मैं मानता हूं कि इसकी हम निश्चित रूप में कल्पना कर सकते हैं. मैं इस बिंदु की ओर भी आपका ध्यान आकर्षित करना चाहूंगा कि किस पद्धति से हमारे देश में, जैसे एमीबा होता है ना कि एक एमीबा से दो, दो से तीन, तीन से मतलब ज्योमेट्रिकल प्रोग्रेशन, उस तरीके से राजनीतिक दलों का विभाजन होता गया. और आज हम देखते हैं कि किस पद्धति से हमारे देश में, आई एम श्योर मेनी टैलेंटेड रिसर्चर्स amongst you must be aware that today our country has close to 2,700 plus political parties which are registered. इसमें से जो recognized political parties हैं, वो हो सकता है लगभग 100 के करीब हो, because there are two kinds of recognition, state level recognition and national recognition. The nationally recognized parties do not go beyond 10 maximum. State recognized parties come to close to 70, 80 at times. But if you take a bird's eye view of most political parties, you will realize that majority, and not just majority means 51 or 50 plus, but I would say at least 80% of the political parties are personality driven, mostly dynasty driven. You can imagine who would be the president of XYZ political party 30 years later. The child, which is just going in the Montessori school right now, is going to be the president of that party if the party survives for the next 30 years. It's something which is a writing on the wall. Rest, whatever the 20% or so political parties, which are ideology-based political parties who continue to exist. But most political parties, as I said, have no ideological connection. If anybody asks any functionary of them, what is your ideology, what is your worldview, what is your policy perspective, are you to the left, to the right of the center, left of the center, I'm sure they would say, we are everywhere. And that is how, that kind of vagueness is there, which is the characteristic of most of the political parties. Today, in most democracies, elected representatives are failing because their parent political parties are bereft of several key ingredients: lack of ideology and idealism, absence of distinct policy perspectives and governance solutions, dearth of able and visionary leadership, and most importantly, no well-knit and structured organizational setup are some of the major issues haunting political parties in most democracies. Traditionally, parties have emerged on the lines of ideologies and worldviews. Post-globalization, traditional binaries of left and right have become obscure. Hence, left, right, and center have lost the distinctiveness of their respective ideological approaches. As a consequence, ideology as a drive of motivating force has become hugely irrelevant. Generally speaking, when ideology attracts activists, they join a political party voluntarily, leading to what is called as cadre building. Cadres are the mainstay of any party organization. However, today, when ideology, the foundational element of a political party itself is disappearing, no wonder the chain of developments leading to building a party organization halts right at the beginning. And in a situation like this, where, as I said, the binding force of ideology seems to be fast eroding, people come to the politics, the arena of party politics, with just single-minded pursuit in their mind, which is, by hook or crook, remain in the power. If possible, remain with the political party which is ruling. To reach up to the power, make money. To remain at the power, again make money. And this has become kind of a vicious circle. I can give several examples how this continues to perpetuate all the ills that are there in our democratic system. To cite an example of a brilliant candidate in a local municipal election. What did he do? चुनाव के समय नगर परिषद का चुनाव था और चुनाव में लोग कुछ बांटते हैं, आजकल एक कल्चर बन गया है, तो उसने प्रेशर कुकर बांटे सभी महिलाओं, मगर पूरा कुकर नहीं, बोला कि ढक्कन मैं जब विजयी होऊंगा तब आपको तब तक आप प्रेशर कुकर संभालें। ये तरीका राजनीति। और इस अवस्था में हर किसी को ये लगता है कि बहती गंगा में मैं भी हाथ धो कर I know for sure, and this was shared with me by members of that housing society in one of the metropolitan cities in Maharashtra when I was conducting my research and for that some interviews as well. And the advocates, doctors, and people of that stature staying in a society told me, when I probed further, that yes, we have passed a resolution, not formally though, of our housing society, that we have 72 votes in the society, and we will vote en bloc to that municipal corporation candidate who assures us to build the compound wall of our society. I said, this is open corruption. They said, so what? जिनको हम चुन रहे हैं वो भी तो बाद में करप्शन करने ही वाले हैं, तो थोड़ा बहुत हमने कर लिया तो क्या? तो ये कल्चर, मतलब राजनीतिक दलों की अवस्था, उनमें आने वाला ये नया प्रवाह, इसके प्रति हमें जागरूक इसलिए भी रहना चाहिए कि ये पूरे समाज को एक दृष्टि से प्रदूषित कर रहा है और जिसके ओर हम चर्चा शायद न भी करें, शायद आंखें खोलकर न भी देखें, मगर ये फैल रहा है महामारी जैसा। इसका आकलन मैं मानता हूं कि इस देश के नागरिक के नाते हम सबको होना चाहिए। Also, one of the factors is the party decline, about which several people have commented in multiple ways. But to understand the process, first of all, I must also mention that likes of Vinay Bhave, Prabhakar Narayan, or even M.S. Golwalkar of the Rashtriya Samsak Sangh have all looked at political parties with utmost skepticism. It is a plain fact that the seeds of degeneration of parties are sown in the way parties emerge. The manner in which political parties have been coming into existence have a bearing upon the way their affairs are conducted later. As is very obvious, when a party comes into existence purely to fulfill the aspirations of its ambitious leaders, it is but natural that such an organization will unabashedly pursue populist politics simply for the sake of attaining power. In India, out of a total of 6 national and 43 state parties recognized by the Election Commission, at least 25 have come into existence to serve the cause of a leader, at best a social group. The present-day scenario in India is far from reassuring. While over-ambitious politicians have consumed their parties, power-centered politics dominated by these parties had subsumed the state. Sociologist D.N. Tagore, a very eminent academic, points out that this primacy of political power compels the ruling elite, and I quote, to take recourse to populist measures to ensure that they remain in power. In this process, ideology obviously is pushed to the periphery. Friends, the phenomenon of party decline is multifaceted and complex. Political scientist Howard Reiter from UK had summarized this process aptly while saying that parties in general are less determinative of attitudes and the behavior of political actors on both the mass and elite levels, less highly regarded and less likely to inspire the electoral act than they once were. मतलब राजनीतिक दलों की वो क्षमता अभी निरस्त हो रही है. As suggested by an authority on party system, Paul E. Webb, there are 2 principal dimensions of party life which largely determine the rise or downfall of a party: legitimacy of the parties in public perception and organizational vitality. That brings us to the question of persons deserting parties, promoting horse trading and making politics a business. Most of those who are deserting their original parties had no particular ideology connect with their original party. Leave aside those who are driven by ideology. Even for others, dynastic parties don't offer even a thin veneer of ideology or idealism. Parties like Congress and the Socialists were once famous for clear and firm ideological positions, but that is not the situation today. Today, not even a semblance of ideology is present in many such parties, and values have become a far cry, and downtrodden people are seen more as vote bank. Dark shadows of an all-pervading crisis of authenticity are seen everywhere in such party organizations or whatever they are. Even the formal structures of the working of these parties are corroded and hence dysfunctional. Constitutional bodies of such parties rarely meet. In most such parties, some coterie is in command. one hardly sees any structured efforts to widen the original social base of a given party. Cadres are left high and dry with nobody to mentor and motivate, and motivation is in acute short supply. I believe I can go on and on in describing this situation. But problem is, we are more concerned about the health of the karta of democracy. I would describe political parties as the karta of this democratic family. And therefore, what is required especially for the organizational health, ability of the political parties to offer policy alternatives and their relevance as well as uniqueness, because people want something new, something unique. Human resources of political parties, their cadre base, their mass following, and of course the quality as human resource. Functional infrastructure developed by parties, their ability to mobilize financial resources legitimately. And fourthly, overall image of political parties in the opinion-making classes, primarily in the media. The million-dollar question now is, how do we review this situation? How do we take care of the health of democracy, and to that aim reform our political parties as key democratic institutions? And there are at least 3 areas in which such reforms are concerned. The first one is party management reforms, the other one is organizational reforms, and the third one is party-related electoral reforms. Coming to the management reforms, I am proposing that establishing a political party should be made much more serious than what it is today. One of the reasons behind mushrooming of so many political parties is the ease of establishment of any party. Registering authorities have neither any mandate nor any mechanism to verify and cross-check the intentions of the founding fathers behind the formation of the respective party. It would be a great idea to make a 6-month-long probationary registration before the final registration certificate is given. Today what happens? If 3-4 of you decide to form a political party, you can go to the office of the Election Commission, local election commission, state election commission, give some papers, some affidavits, some Aadhaar card and whatnot, and then immediately you get a certificate within no time, almost within a week's time. Go directly to the printing press, order printing of the visiting cards that you are the national president of XYZ party, print letterheads, and roam around in the city saying that I am the political boss. It is that easy and therefore certainly very dangerous. All in all, the entire process of forming a new political party must be made more serious. The functioning of most political parties continues to be highly opaque. In this context, it must be made mandatory for the party to have a party portal at which they must publish their annual report giving details of the issues handled and activities conducted. Annual accounts of state and national units of all parties also must be mandatorily put on their websites. Recruitment process of most political parties lacks transparency. Hence, for parties, it must be made mandatory to maintain a district level party membership register. Internal democracy. I mean, say for 3-4 political parties, most political parties are not known for conducting internal elections. Elections for party office bearers should be conducted under a framework which is to be laid down by the Election Commission of India. It is there today also, but it needs to be more firm. 2 or more blood relatives simultaneously occupying office in a political party must be prohibited. If we don't want dynasties to be the governing agents of the political party, I think this reform is a must. Because this has happened essentially because of the ill-gotten funds. Because the head of the political party is not ready to believe in any other than his blood relative, whether his daughter-in-law, his daughter, his son-in-law, or somebody. And therefore, he makes him or her the treasurer of the party. The other one who gets annoyed by that is becomes the general secretary of the party. And likewise, a dynasty controls the political party, which is certainly detrimental to the health of democracy. human resource development, now coming to the organizational reforms. And this is very, very critical. और मुझे याद आ रहा है कि 1980 में, और मैं उदाहरण इसलिए दे रहा हूँ कि वो मेरे अनुभव का विषय है, इसमें कोई दलगत विषय नहीं है, कृपया अगर ऐसा किसी को लगता है तो मुझे माफ करें। जब भारतीय जनता पार्टी का स्थापना अधिवेशन हो रहा था 1980 में मुंबई में, तब एक हास्य कवि सम्मेलन आयोजित किया गया। अटल जी अध्यक्ष थे और उस कवि सम्मेलन में शैल चतुर्वेदी जी को बुलाया गया। उस समय प्रथा पद्धति थी और दलगत राजनीति में भी एक गुणवत्ता थी कि लोग आना जाना संवाद ये सब करते थे। तो चतुर्वेदी जी आए, वो कोई बीजेपी के नहीं थे, मगर खास कवि सम्मेलन में उन्होंने बड़े उत्साह से भाग लिया और उन्होंने एक कविता प्रस्तुत की, जो मैं मानता हूँ कि जिस विषय की ओर मैं आपका ध्यान आकर्षित करना चाहता हूँ उसके लिए बहुत प्रासंगिक है। कविता कुछ इस प्रकार थी कि नए नए मंत्री बने एक सज्जन जब पहली बार अपनी सरकारी कार में बैठे, और उस जमाने में वो रेड बीकन की कार होती थी, तो नए नए मंत्री बने सज्जन जब पहली बार अपनी सरकारी कार में बैठे, तब उन्होंने ड्राइवर को कहा, आज कार मैं चलाऊंगा। ड्राइवर बेचारा डर का मारा विनम्रता से बोला, तो हुजूर मैं उतर जाऊंगा। भला क्यों? मंत्री जी ने पूछा। ड्राइवर ने कहा, क्योंकि महोदय ये कार है, सरकार नहीं जो भगवान भरोसे चल सके। तो कार चलाने के लिए लाइसेंस की जरूरत है, प्रशिक्षण की आवश्यकता है, सरकार चलाने के लिए बस चुन कर आना पर्याप्त है। इस स्थिति का परिवर्तन, और मुझे बड़ा आश्चर्य हुआ कि बहुत सारे मेरे अध्ययन के विषय के संदर्भ में जनतांत्रिक देशों की व्यवस्थाओं को जब मैं देखा, कहीं भी इस तरीके की रचना नहीं है कि जो निर्वाचित प्रतिनिधि है उनकी क्षमता का हम विकास करें। Getting elected is one thing, to be able to govern is a totally different ballgame. And one will have to prepare elected representatives to govern. It requires your ability to take a decision. It requires your ability to control the bureaucracy. It requires your ability also to appreciate, to understand the situation, to assess, to judge. All these things are required, and simply because you are popular, to consider that you possess all these things, I think, is naive and innocent. And therefore, on the lines of foundations supported by parties in Germany, where they call them as Stiftungen, efforts should be made to establish training and research centers for and by parties with partial financial assistance from the government. The possibility of making comprehensive training mandatory for all first-timers, whether the people's elected representative or party office bearers, also should be explored. It may also be considered to make rules ensuring that no elected official could seek renomination without undergoing training during his first tenure. It may sound like utopian, but we are in an academic discussion, so there is no harm in putting an idealistic view as well. Post-poll alliances are an affront on the purity of people's desire. Hence, a system of recognizing only a pre-poll alliance should be in place. Issuing a joint public declaration explaining the objectives of the alliance and the nature of understanding with a clear provision for dissolution under specific circumstances should be made mandatory. All post-poll alliances should be primarily considered illegal. The Election Commission of India should have the discretion of allowing such alliances only when there is a constitutional deadlock and only after filing due affidavits about the common minimum program and common policy perspectives. Defections of elected representatives at every level, and whether that of an individual or a group, should be banned, making vacation of seat by the defector mandated. There are scores of party-related electoral reforms, giving incentives to the elected representatives for filing a report to the electorate and publishing it every year. The details of candidates' assets must be published in the local newspapers and should be aired on local television channels as well. Mandatory publication of a manifesto by contesting parties at respective levels, followed by a compulsory action taken report on the manifestos by every political party. See, whether you are a ruling party or an opposition party, if you have promised something, even while in the opposition, you have the ability to pursue that thing. And people have, they have a right to know as to how you have followed up on whatever you wanted us to you wanted people and give as a promise. Even parties that have lost the election could be asked to give information about their efforts to follow on their promises. Mandatory publication of a constituency manifesto, because they have to travel from local to the global. And therefore, whether he is a Lok Sabha candidate or a Vidhan Sabha, a constituency manifesto is something very, very critical. And therefore, whether that could also be made mandatory should be explored with the publication of action taken report as well. Till such time that simultaneous elections, there was a reference to one nation, one election, which is, I would describe as the mother of all political reforms. If that really happens, let us do away with the misnomer that more the election, more the democracy. No. Because democracy is not synonymous with elections. More the election, take it from me, more the corruption. And if you don't want corruption to thrive, less number of decently conducted election is the way to go. Till such time that it becomes a reality, Election Commission would do well to experiment with following measures to reduce campaign expenditure, and I have given some measures also. For example, like Doordarshan, private TV channels be mandated to telecast campaign speeches of party leaders from every state. Nothing prevents us from doing that. Admin authorities be asked to reserve public grounds to be allocated to parties turn by turn for campaign through a lottery system. Local drama theatres could be allocated to parties for their use turn by turn so as to have street plays, campaign skits, etc. See, creativity is an element, essential element of any society, living society. And unfortunately in our election campaigns today, everything shrill is coming in and everything creative is moving out. And therefore let us restore that creativity also, whether music, dance, drama, whatever. In order to promote creative ideas of campaign, parties should be asked to join poster, banner or hoarding competitions to be conducted by the Election Commission, the results of which could be announced post-polling. Similarly, a campaign song competition also could be organized. I mean, these are very rudimentary suggestions, but I thought if politics is to be made qualitatively more productive, if people are to associate themselves with the process of democracy, not just process of election, mind it well, then all these things are required. And therefore, friends, I am suggesting all these things because unfortunately in our country, and that is the very serious threat which I must make a mention of, and that is of populism. Many wrong things we are allowing to happen because people will get annoyed. And this is something, the more the number of elections, the more is this threat of popular annoyance, which our politicians are not ready to face. Therefore, unfortunately, democracy is being misinterpreted by some as a license to reject the rule of law. This requires to be done away with. And for that, I appeal that a slew of reforms in the way our political parties conduct themselves are required. If that happens, at least some amount of sanctity, some amount of purity, some amount of rationality perhaps could be restored in our democracy. Our democracy is not something that Westminster model of the Britishers have given us. Democracy is in our blood. Because our democracy has its roots in spiritual democracy here. We never allowed any kind of monopolism. We never had thought of my way or highway at any point of time. We welcomed everybody. We allowed all because ekam sat vipra bhada varanti has been the cornerstone of this democracy. And therefore, if this democracy is to continue to be vibrant and also delivering at the same time, then reforms is the way to go. And Most importantly, even Rabindra Tagore had mentioned this in one of his writings. I was just trying to research as to what was the opinion of Gurudev about democracy, and here comes what I found out. The core of Tagore's democratic concerns lay not so much in the form of democracy and the dominant conception of liberalism attached to it, but in the idea of Atma Shakti or self-empowerment. I believe for that Atma Shakti, to awaken the Atman of the Indian democracy, we have to repair the institutions, and that process needs to start with our political bodies. I would suggest that some discourse is built around the party reforms, and then only this country, which is the mainspring of democratic traditions globally, I think certainly can tell the global community with due sense of pride that democracy is in our veins, democracy is in our blood, democracy is in our heart, and democracy is also in our brain, in our mind, in our thinking. Thank you.
आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर। आपने कई महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दों पर हमारा ध्यान आकर्षित किया, और सबसे बड़ी बात जो आपने कही कि लोकतंत्र का मतलब इलेक्शन नहीं है, और लोकतंत्र होना, it's not just a concept. You brought out the abstractness of democracy and connected it to the very real practical bit of how it is implemented, how we actually live democratic ideals. And of course, you also drew our attention to the kind of corruption that takes place in the name of elections. जो सत्ता में रहने के लिए जिस तरह के हथकंडे अपनाए जाते हैं, जिस तरह का जो भ्रष्टाचार है, जो हमारे समाज को प्रदूषित कर रहा है, जिसकी तरफ हम ध्यान भी नहीं देते। हम प्रदूषण की बहुत बात करते हैं। We talk about the environment, we talk about water and air pollution. We never talk about the pollution in our society that is caused by these kind of corruption and these kind of corruptive practices. And because it is now taken for granted कि ये तो होगा ही, अगर इलेक्शन होंगे तो हमें कुछ ना कुछ तो वो ऑफर करेंगे ही हमारे मत के लिए. So this kind of a given, I think that is the most dangerous, that we accept that this corruption is there and it will continue and it has become a part of our society and a part of our life. So thank you very much for drawing our attention to that. And you just did not talk about democracy, you did not just talk about our political parties, you just did not talk about what needs to be done, but you offered very solid solutions to that. So it was not utopian in the least, sir, as you said. It was something that I think can be and should be implemented, should be achieved if we need to have a very healthy and vibrant democracy. So thank you very much, sir, for that very lucid lecture, interspersed with humor, because a lot of times we are scared to say something about our politicians, but you, with your wit and humor, you lightened your talk and made it so much more palatable. So thank you very much. I would now like to request the Secretary of IIAS, Shri Meherchand Devi ji, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. मंच पर आसीन आज के मुख्य अतिथि तथा वक्ता राज्यसभा के पूर्व सांसद, भारतीय सांस्कृतिक संबंध परिषद नई दिल्ली के पूर्व अध्यक्ष माननीय प्रोफेसर विजय प्रभाकर सहदेव जी, भारतीय उच्च संस्थान के अध्यक्ष महोदय प्रोफेसर श्री प्रभा कुमार जी, उपाध्यक्ष महोदय शैलेंद्र राज मेहता जी, निदेशक महोदय प्रोफेसर राजेंद्र तिवारी जी, हमारे नेशनल फेलो प्रोफेसर आरसी सिन्हा जी, सभागार में प्रधान सभी जन उपस्थित देवियों, सज्जनों एवं सभी साथियों को मेरा सादर नमस्कार। सर्वप्रथम मैं हमारे आज के मुख्य वक्ता माननीय प्रोफेसर विनय प्रभाकर सहस्त्रबुद्धे साहब का संस्थान की ओर से हार्दिक धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करता हूँ, जिन्होंने इतनी व्यवस्था के बावजूद समय निकाला और हमारे अनुरोध स्वीकार करते हुए इस उद्बोधन में मुख्य वक्ता के रूप में पधार कर हमें अनुग्रहित किया। हम आपके उद्बोधन से निसंदेह ही लाभान्वित हुए हैं। माननीय प्रोफेसर विनय प्रभाकर सहस्त्रबुद्धे जी एक प्रभावी लोकतांत्रिक शासन के लिए राजनीतिक दल सुधार, राजनीतिक दलों का स्वास्थ्य और लोकतंत्र की सफलता, विचारधारा और राजनीतिक दलों का अलगाव और उसका प्रभाव, पार्टी संबंधी चुनाव सुधार आदि पर प्रकाश डाल उससे हम बहुत ही प्रेरित हुए। मैं एक बार पुनः आपको सादर नमन करता हूँ कि आपने संस्थान की ओर से हमारा अनुरोध स्वीकार कर हमें गरिमा प्रदान की। साथ ही मैं संस्थान की अध्यक्ष महोदय प्रोफेसर शशि कुमार जी का, उपाध्यक्ष महोदय प्रोफेसर शैलेंद्र मेहता जी का और निदेशक महोदय राबिंद्र तिवारी जी के प्रति भी हृदय से आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ, जिनके मार्गदर्शन में हम इस लेक्चर को सफलता से आयोजित कर रहे हैं। साथ में मैं सभागार में उपस्थित सभी श्रोताओं का भी धन्यवाद करता हूँ जो अपनी कीमती समय निकालकर इस उद्बोधन में को सुनने आए। इसके साथ ही मैं उन सभी का भी धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करता हूँ जो परोक्ष और प्रत्यक्ष और परोक्ष दोनों रूप से इस ज्ञान यज्ञ को सफल बनाने के लिए हमारा साथ दिए। धन्यवाद दिए।
Beginning tomorrow, the IIAS is organizing a seminar on the translations of the Ramcharitmanas, and tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. we'll have the inaugural session, which will be presided over by the Governor of Himachal Pradesh. All of you are very, very cordially invited to attend and listen to the discourses, the discussions that will ensue over the next 2 days. And before we stand for the national anthem, I think we should all make a resolution कि जिस तरह से जो भेंट स्वरूप आपको पौधा दिया गया था सर, जिस तरह से मुझे यकीन है आप उसको सींच के उसकी देखभाल करेंगे। हम सब लोग हमारे लोकतंत्र को हम इसी तरह से सींचें उस पौधे की तरह and keep it as healthy and as vibrant as possible. I'd now like to request you all to stand for the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा, विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा, तव शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तब जय गाथा, जय गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।
Thank you one and all, and wishing you a very, very good evening.